Good evening. On behalf of the Keene Sentinel, welcome to the 2020 Extraordinary Women Recognition Gala. My name is Paul Miller, and I will be your host for this evening's program. I am thrilled and honored to again be a part of this program. This event arrives at an opportune moment. It is a feel-good and positive diversion from the weight of these times. As we operate in this virtual setting that we have become hesitatingly accustomed to, if not entirely comfortable with, we are obviously not sharing the physical space for the next hour or so, and we will all miss that. But in no way should it diminish why we are together, which is to honor special people who do special things to make where we live this special place that it is. We want this to be a memorable evening for you, all of you, honorees, families, and friends. So kick back, assume your favorite virtual viewing position. We will assume that all of you already have your favorite virtual viewing beverage at the ready. Relax and enjoy. A little bit about this evening's program. We will meet each of the 10 honorees and see a video and photos of them. Also, 2 short video messages will be shown during the show, so look forward to those. Otherwise, just a couple of brief announcements. First is to recognize the generous sponsors without whom this event does not happen. We want to be sure to point out these area businesses, to ask you to thank them, and to encourage you to patronize them. They are Cheshire Medical Center, Dartmouth-Hitchcock, Keene, MCVP Crisis and Prevention Center, Savings Bank of Walpole, Douglas, Connection, Courtyard by Marriott, and the Keene Sentinel. Second is to take note of the fact that the Sentinel does not play a role in the selection of the women being honored this evening. A panel of community judges is assigned that difficult task. The 4 individuals who gave their time to judge this year are smart, connected, giving people, and community champions of their own. They are Jennifer Carroll, Kathy Collinsworth, Emily Levine-Bernier, and Jen Risley. We thank them, and you can learn more about each of the judges in the Extraordinary Women commemorative magazine that will be inserted in Friday's Sentinel. Third is to thank Alex Trombley of AMT Productions, to let him know how much we appreciate him being able to lend his talents and produce this show. I have worked with Alex a lot over the years. He's a pro's pro and so very gifted at his craft. Pulling all of this together and throwing in a little digital ambiance, that is all Alex. This is the 8th Extraordinary Women Tribute. This is an evening that never fails to energize and to inspire. The women you are about to meet are more apt to go out of their way to avoid attention, let alone savor this spotlight. It is not their nature. They are not attention getters. What they share that transcends time and place and our new physical boundaries are certain values and character traits. Our 10 honored women this evening are doers, not talkers. They understand the power and the potential of community, and they know the positive spirit, especially in a collective form, is what affects meaningful change. This year, more than any perhaps, the term extraordinary takes on a heightened meaning. Our moment of national challenge is a clarion call to rise and respond with a sense of togetherness and regard for those who are most affected here at home, on our streets, in our neighborhoods, a hungry child, an anxious furloughed parent, a lonely senior citizen facing a form of interminable home confinement one could not have imagined. We are so incredibly fortunate to live in a region that boasts so many people who go out of their way to marshal and to direct some kind of response such as this, and not necessarily without risk. This evening, as we have seen on this night so many times before, the power of the human spirit and the compassionate heart will reveal itself, and it will awe you. You will meet a dynamic 27-year-old camp director and new foster mom, a mother and surrogate mother who by day deftly guides families through grieving over the loss of loved ones, a business owner and a nonprofit board member reminding every child that they can dream and then making dreams come true, a retired doctor bent on delivering a cleaner, healthier, and more sustainable future for generations to follow, a lifelong pediatric and geriatric nurse, now retired, and a former home health care aide who are fighting to alleviate food insecurity challenges in the region with startup programs aimed at the young and the old. You will meet a humble executive leading a family resource center that is growing, adapting, and delivering programs and resources that improve outcomes and change lives. A native of Malawi who has gone the distance, literally and figuratively, to find her voice, her passion, and then to share it all as a leading educator. An accomplished patient care administrator with 4 nursing degrees devoted to solving the complexities of healthcare for patients, hospital staff, and crisis scenarios to keep our community well and to keep it safe. And you will meet the woman behind a most amazing local nonprofit making a difference for hundreds of caregivers and children every day. And that is just one of the many civic-minded hats that she wears. Need more be said? Okay, maybe a little more. So let us do that now by meeting the first 4 extraordinary women of 2020. Our first honoree is Cheryl Belair. Cheryl is known in equal measure for her smile, her heart, and her effusive energy. So maybe it is no big surprise that she began her own company, an insurance firm, at age 21 and today remains its president. Or that she fills up so much of her non-work time as a civic leader and volunteer out of want to give back to a community that has stood with her. Perhaps it explains her desire to make a difference, especially in the lives of children and families that have less than others, something she knows about from her own early years. Cheryl serves on the board of the Keene Family YMCA, where she helped start Fill the Duffel, an initiative that is a collaboration with the Y, Camp Dakota, and the Keene Housing Kids Collaborative to send children living in Keene housing properties to overnight camp or to an entire summer of YMCA day camp. She also has been a member of the Keene Rotary Club since 1994 and sits on the board of the DeMar Marathon. You might have seen her. She's the bubbly person dancing and jumping and cheering each of the hundreds of finishers just before the finish line. Her involvement continues with projects funded by the race, like the Follow Me sneaker program. Through this initiative, the Rotary Club provides brand new pairs of sneakers to second graders in almost every school in Cheshire County. Quote, I feel like even the smallest little thing that we can do, that could be the one thing that shows even every child has another world for them, Cheryl says. Here's a video of Cheryl.
I grew up in Manchester. My family struggled financially. We went through periods of not having enough food and having the electricity turned off in our apartment, not having money to put oil in the oil tank so that it was cold. And I'm a firm believer that no child should go through that. The kids just speak to my heart. It's what has kept me involved with many organizations. If there's even one child that's a little bit happier and a little bit safer because of even one thing that I've been able to do, then it's all worth it. The funds that we raise from the marathon and the fundraising that we do, you know, we're putting sneakers on every single second grader in Cheshire County. And many of these kids, many more than you can imagine, the shoes I'm taking off their feet to put their new sneakers on, in some cases are 2 sizes too small. When I'm at the finish line of the DeMar, it's not just about cheering on some fabulous athletes and runners, but it's the thought of the kids and how the kids will benefit that actually really inspires me. I could not spend the time I spend volunteering if I didn't have an amazing staff picking up the loose ends for me. It really does allow me to do what I do out in the community.
Our next honoree is Susan Bemis. Often, the difference between a vision and reality is in the follow-through. Susan Bemis has a history of following through, as her professional, civic, and volunteer resume reflects. Since December 2019, Susan has focused her talents, drive, and follow-through on Kids Cupboard, a nonprofit she launched to help alleviate food insecurity for children in the town of Marlborough. Determined to see that nobody in her hometown goes hungry, Susan expanded the nonprofit to include low-income seniors in town. Since the onset of COVID-19, the organization has grown. To date, it helps to feed 39 Marlborough children on a weekly basis, and the nonprofit now benefits from Monadnock United Way funding to the community kitchen in Keene. Initially a weekend program, Kids Cupboard now today is a weekday program. There are many other layers to Susan's extraordinary service. Starting in 2006, she served on the leadership board of the now defunct Marl Harris Ambulance Service and sits on the board of the Marl Harris Emergency Squad. She is secretary-treasurer of the Marlborough High School Alumni Association and since 1989 has served as the Marlborough School District Clerk. As a young adult, she headlined a popular area band. Later, Susan, her sister, and a friend formed Sisters Unplugged, an a cappella trio. Up until a few years ago, they sang 50s oldies and big band favorites in area nursing homes, town, church events, and restaurants. Quote, "When I think of extraordinary women, I don't think of myself," Susan says. "I'm just one person who had an idea." Here is a video of Susan.
I've always had a passion for elderly and children. Those two seem to me to connect in my world, and I find myself doing things either ends of those spectrums. And the kids cupboard was something I wanted to do. I didn't really know how. I talked with some folks, and they have a program called Got Lunch, and they were kind enough to let me ride with them one day and to find out how they work their program. And then I said, I want to do this. And I had no idea really how to do it. I had no idea what help I might get along the way. And on January 8th of 2018, we received a grant and food, and we started delivering on February 2018 to the children in town. So it was challenging, but I have a great group of volunteers. Without them, this couldn't work. Everybody sometimes in their lifetime might need a little hand up, and I think that it's okay, and it's what we're here for. We all help each other at different times in our stages in our lives. You never know what's going to happen.
Our next honoree is Jennifer Dastau. Jennifer plunked down $25 into a bank account 3 years ago to start a nonprofit called Feeding Tiny Tummies. The payoff has been swift and sweeping. 2 years after the modest bank deposit, the nonprofit had a $27,000 budget. The organization now provides food items each week to more than 200 children enrolled in the federal Head Start program, which supports low-income families, and students at other schools in Cheshire and Sullivan counties. This past spring, amid the COVID outbreak, 10,000 meals a day were being produced by Feeding Tiny Tummies. And since the coronavirus outbreak, Feeding Tiny Tummies has also delivered food to some elderly and disabled adults in its coverage area. Jennifer, a Marlow resident, credits several entities, including Southwestern Community Services, which runs the region's Head Start program, that help with deliveries, and local food providers contributed fresh milk, produce, and bread. Jennifer's activism is not limited to battling food insecurity. She spent more than 2 years at MCVP Crisis and Prevention Center, assisting survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence. Before leaving the organization earlier this month, she was the center's family violence prevention specialist. Jennifer's newest add-on pursuit will be as guardian ad litem, advocating for the best interest of children involved in legal proceedings. Quote, "My education and my skills are ready for that," Jennifer said. "I know I can make a difference and help these kids when they're going through hard times." Her nomination letter describes Jennifer in part this way: "She is one woman who makes a difference for literally hundreds of caregivers and children on a daily basis." Here is a video of Jennifer.
Every time in our lives, myself included being a single mom, there are times that we need help, and we need to know that people are here to help us with no judgment. When I worked with Head Start, a teacher came to me and had said, "So this child in my classroom is on their 4th bowl of cereal. Should I have them stop?" And I said, "No." I said, "I really believe there's a reason why." Before the end of the day, the parent came in to pick up the child, and I met with the parent, and they had run out of food over the weekend. I started taking some classes with the New Hampshire Food Bank and decided to start Tiny Tummies. This mom reached out to me who had a 2-year-old and a newborn, and she wasn't producing enough breast milk. So she needed some formula and she needed some food. I got her formula and diapers and food, and she had the 2-year-old and the newborn. And that night, after I had got her all of this stuff together, at 10:30 at night, I received a message, and she said, "I want you to know that my babies are sound asleep in bed with full bellies, and it's because of you, and I want to thank you." So to me, one message like that every few months reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm making a difference in the life of a family, a child, children, and that's what matters to me.
Our next honoree is Carly Fisher. Carly is not defined by her Camp Dakota experiences alone, but to steal her words, it's darn near close. Carly, just 27, grew up attending the YMCA camp in Richmond every summer even after her family moved from Keene to Nova Scotia when she was 7. She became a camp counselor, and not long after graduating from Dalhousie University in Halifax with a degree in English and psychology, she made her way back to this region to take a position as the camp's assistant director in 2017. Best friends, major relationships, career, values, education choice in college, all rooted, she says, in some way to the day in overnight camp in the small town where she now lives. But her impact is far more than helping to create memorable life experiences in a camp setting. Carly helps to lead the Monadnock Youth Coalition, which focuses on substance misuse among youth, and serves on a YMCA public policy team that lobbies for statewide legislation related to youth development. She volunteers with the Keene Housing Kids Collaborative and the Monadnock Humane Society, where she helps with fundraising and events. She is also an advocate and supervisor at MCVP Crisis and Prevention Center and spends about 20 nights a month serving as an on-call advocate for survivors of sexual and domestic violence and providing support for other advocates and volunteers. Carly is also a foster parent. Recently, she was matched with her first long-term placement through the foster care system, an infant. At Dakota, Carly is, quote, universally loved and adored, Ryan Reed, the camp director, says, adding, quote, she has been a strong role model for campers. Here is a video of Carly.
I've always had a soft spot for working with women. And so I spent my life growing up at girls' camp at Camp Dakota. And even now, we have a much more nuanced understanding of gender than we did when I was growing up. And so with the full understanding that not all of our girls campers identify that way, I've loved coaching some of the staff and the campers at that camp in particular. Because when I was growing up there, I learned a lot by spending so much time around people who shared that same identity as I did. And I really learned that there's no one right way to be a woman, and none of us is perfect. And I think that that is an education that has been very foundational in the things that I've done. The earlier we can start and really invest our time, our resources, our education in young people, that is how we make long-term change. I think it happens sort of generation by generation. And some of my happiest memories have involved raising other people's children, which I've been doing my whole life. I remember being a very strong-willed and independent kid, and I would grow up and see things that I didn't like and be very motivated to change them. So I guess it's never really been comfortable for me to sit by and wait for somebody else to take care of problems when I see them.
We want to play a video for you now that starts with a message from Robin Christofferson, the director of the MCVP Crisis and Prevention Center, who has been a key part of the Extraordinary Women Recognition event since it began. Robin and her incredible team are unsung heroes for the difficult but so very important work they do supporting survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. MCVP, as it has been for all the previous Extraordinary Women events, is tonight's video sponsor. Here is Robin and some of her colleagues.
Hello out there, and welcome to Extraordinary Women 2020, virtual style. I'm Robin Christofferson, Executive Director of MCVP Crisis and Prevention Center. MCVP is the Domestic and Sexual Violence, Stalking, and Human Sex Trafficking Crisis Center for the 44 towns of the Monadnock region. MCVP is grateful to be able to support the Extraordinary Women Recognition event as the video sponsor once again this year. Even though we cannot be together in person, this is such an important event, recognizing women in our community who make our community a better place for all of us. I'm glad that this effort by the Keene Sentinel did not skip a beat. You know what we say in the women's movement? Nevertheless, she persisted. So it's only fitting that we persist and give name and honor to those women who are doing the same, right here in our backyards. Cheshire County Historical Society recently created a virtual installation about empowered women in our region from the 1700s right up to 2018. 23 women who made their mark in local history and beyond, and who persisted to create change and improve the quality of life for all. Here we are in 2020, in the middle of a very uncertain time, and we have 10 women who still, yet, nevertheless, persist and do the same. Maybe there's something in the water or the air is rarefied in the Monadnock region, but you have to admit, we seem to be more than blessed with our share of change makers and empowered women. MCVP is just winding down our recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is October. One of the themes this year is #PowerUp, which encourages engagers to consider their power as individuals and as part of a larger collective devoted to reducing and eliminating domestic violence in the United States. Somehow that theme seems to resonate with our 10 honorees. They've powered up as individuals to work for the greater good. I encourage us to breathe that rarefied air and take the waters in their collective virtual presence and be inspired to do the same. Just to get your toe in the water, we have a short video of some vignettes and images in honor of the 10 extraordinary women, because we know that empowered women lead to extraordinary women. Here's to the extraordinary women of 2020. Gonna get my party gear on. Micah, enjoy.
The Oxford Dictionary defines community as the feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals.
At MCVP, we define community as a place where violence is not tolerated and everyone stands up against violence.
To achieve this, we need you, our community, to join us in empowering survivors and breaking the cycle of abuse that too many of our friends, coworkers, and family members have dealt with over the years.
In 2019, MCVP advocates worked with 953 survivors of sexual and domestic violence, stalking, and human trafficking.
We know there are even more people in our community living in violence that have not yet sought our services or that never will.
2020 has been a year like no other. The pandemic has presented many challenges and opportunities. It's raised awareness around domestic violence, but that awareness stems from the stay-at-home orders, because home isn't always the safest place.
When we first moved to remote services, we experienced this eerily quiet period on our crisis line. We feared the survivors were not able to access our services due to being trapped at home with the person causing violence. Survivors use their lunch breaks, their working periods, as a safety net so that they can come and get help.
They are less likely to be tracked by the person causing them harm during those hours. So when many businesses closed or went to remote work, survivors lost their way to contact advocates.
As stay-at-home order restrictions relax, we have started to see an uptick in calls again. We are also starting to see survivors in person through scheduled appointments.
The challenges 2020 has presented show us that now more than ever, we must come together and support survivors.
That means you can show support while following our online presence or even becoming a crisis line volunteer.
As an employer, you can lend a listening ear or support your staff member when needing to seek MCVP services, legal services, or attend hearings.
Simply talk to your loved ones about what healthy looks and feels like. One thing is certain, there is still plenty of work to be done.
To everyone who has supported us in these ways and more this past year, we want to thank you.
Thank you, Robin. I am always left in awe by the courage and the care that Robin and her team work with, given the urgency and the emotional nature of their work. So congratulations to all of them. Now let's meet three more extraordinary women. Our next honoree is Melissa Gallagher. Melissa first walked into the Grapevine Family and Community Resource Center in Antrim in 2007 as a young mother new to the region. With that visit, She found something special, including what would become a culmination to this point of a path of work focused on advocating for policies and programs and resources in support of children and family well-being. Melissa, in short time, became a parent volunteer, a board member of the nonprofit, and board president before stepping into her current role as just the second executive director of the Grapevine in its 25-year history. The Grapevine serves children and families in Antrim, Bennington, Hancock, and Hillsborough, and is part of this region's difference-making human services community. Under her leadership, the nonprofit has expanded its territorial reach, adapted with new technologies, and met the challenges of current times as in-person services shift to largely virtual offerings. Quote, "Life is about supporting each other, about understanding, which is the culture we've built at the Grapevine," Melissa says. In October 2019, Melissa mobilized her staff and the community to respond to a local teen's suicide. She facilitated a community forum that listened to concerns and questions about suicide and identified strategies to address the crisis. She supported counselors and mentors to learn how to manage grief and how to recognize signs of mental health crisis and get help. And she helped organize a community training on suicide prevention. Quote, "In everything she has accomplished in every interaction, Melissa lives out the mission of the Grapevine," board member Dottie Bauer said. Melissa is also humble and modest, yet one of her staff told me that Melissa is the person who works hardest to support everybody else. The work the center does makes it more likely for families to get through a hard time and gives moms and dads a better chance to be the good parents they want to be, Melissa says. Quote, "I love my job. I love the people I work with. This is what I was built for." Here is a video of Melissa.
We lost a 13-year-old girl in our community to suicide. Very graciously and courageously, the family of the young girl connected with the Grapevine, and we were able to honor the request of the family to provide more education and resources in our community. So we started with a forum around how we as a community, as a whole community, can support one another and continue to make suicide an issue that all of us own and take hold of. And so we continued from that forum. We heard from families that they wanted more education. They wanted to bring more awareness to the signs and symptoms of suicide and how both adults and other young people could be more aware of what those signs look like. So we continue to partner with New Hampshire to bring a training to our community this past February. We are really committed to encourage dialogue and ensure that as much training and support and resources are available to anyone in our community that needs it.
Our next honoree is Carol Hill. Carol has spent a lifetime in nursing, pediatrics to geriatrics, and as a comforter and provider for hospice patients. Yet, as her profile reveals in these words, she really started cooking when she retired. Hill is a fixture at the Keene Unitarian Universalist Church, where a decade ago she was the catalyst in starting a breakfast program for people experiencing homelessness. Her work continues today, the program having expanded to several local churches with the help from the community kitchen in Keene. Not even the coronavirus pandemic has slowed this 78-year-old. When on-site meals had to be curtailed in March due to the pandemic, she organized a network of volunteers to bring fully cooked breakfasts to go. Carol began her nursing career at Mercy Hospital in Baltimore in 1965 and has worked on just about every floor in her nursing career, ER to X-ray. She and her husband, Bob, a carpenter and cabinet maker, have been married for 54 years. They have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Fellow volunteer Pat Barber describes Carol, quote, as the local cheerleader for those who do not have a voice. Carol is part of the America Reads program at Franklin Elementary School, is an avid gardener at her home and at her church, and has volunteered with the New Hampshire Small Dog Rescue Group. Carol admits to having the caregiver gene, or that desire to give back to her community. But, as she says, quote, if you've got that gene, unless you're using that gene, you're not going to be happy, Here is a video of Carol.
The breakfast started because the shelter emptied at 7, and then from 7 to 9 in the morning, there was really no shelter for these folks to go to. They had nowhere to go. They would go to the library at 9, but for the 2 hours in between, there was nothing. So it started at our church, at the Unitarian Church, and the breakfast started just one day a week, and Bob and I agreed to do all the grocery shopping. Other churches wanted to become involved, and it became an interfaith program, and we have 6 days a week. In addition to serving food, there's also the component of people being recognized and talked to. My husband and I heard that they were struggling with backpacks. One of the things that I talked with them about was what would help, and they said if we had lockers. So we went to the old middle school that was being renovated, disassembled, and took lockers to the 100-night shelter.
Our next honoree is Jean Kiera. Jean's story is less a success story, although it is all of that, than it is a story of journey, metaphorically and physically. Her story is one of self-discovery and perseverance. Jean, 53, married and mother to 3 daughters, is the director of the doctorate program in environmental studies at Antioch University, New England, which has 75 students in the field doing research projects around the world. Jean grew up in Malawi, a landlocked southeastern African country. Malawi is one of the least developed countries in Africa, with a low life expectancy for its population and a high infant mortality rate. Educational opportunities are limited. Jean's circuitous route here was long and winding, covering thousands of miles, marked by reflection about those who believed in her and helped to shape her path, and an evolving confidence in what was possible. She earned her doctorate in environmental and sustainability at Canada at the University of Saskatchewan, 9,000 miles from Malawi. Before that, she attained a master's in environmental science at Clark University in Worcester, Mass., where her husband, Keaton, had come before her to pursue his own advanced degree. Jean directs Antioch's Center for Tropical Ecology and Conservation and has held conferences in Keene while working with partners from Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Brazil, Rwanda, India, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Her work extends beyond membership and instruction. She co-directs Community Garden Connections with her colleague, Libby McCann. 10 years of that work, funded by private donations, has helped build local food capacity and decreased food insecurity in the face of climate change. It's facilitated the installation of 68 garden beds at 13 social service agencies. Sites are run by student volunteers and community members, and efforts have resulted in 77 tons of food donated so far. Quote, "This was meant for me," Jean says of the mentoring nature of education. "I have something to share. I know a little bit, but I know the students bring a lot. We are in a co-learning environment." Here is a video of Jean.
I am from Malawi, Southeast Africa. Our farming practices at that time when I was a little girl were the fields were a mosaic of different crops. Doing a master's in environmental science and policy took me back to my growing up, my school system. I started questioning what my grandparents were teaching us at home. Those questions led me to actually go back to school and learn and explore the role of indigenous knowledge systems in the environmental sustainability. My doctoral research was based on that. I did my research with the kids back home. I had 14 kids with me on a daily basis. In the village, we went to talk to elders, talk to their teachers. I am faculty in the environmental studies department. This is my 8th year. I teach environmental education-related courses. We work with students on the community garden connections. We also have an acre-sized garden at the Westmoreland, where there used to be an old jail. All the food that is grown there, or the vegetables, are donated to the community kitchen.
There is no shortage of community champions in this region, but if you scroll to the top of that list, you will find Savings Bank of Walpole. Bank President Mark Bowden and his team live out their customer-focused, community-centered mission every day and in all that they do, always seeking answers to one simple burning question: how can we help you today? They do that by giving back to the community, by being an advocate, by being a voice, by being a financial contributor, by being a team of volunteers, by being a cheerleader. Whatever the moment calls for. Savings Bank of Walpole has supported this event from the start, and for that we are grateful. Here is Mark with a brief message.
Hi, I'm Mark Bowden, President of Savings Bank of Walpole. We're thrilled to be a sponsor of the Extraordinary Women event again this year. It's such a fun and important event that we're always going to be part of it, even during a pandemic. Like so many things in 2020, we're unable to get together in person to honor and celebrate the extraordinary women being recognized tonight. But we appreciate the Keene Sentinel and their efforts all year to make sure that the people that make our community special are still recognized and that they're not letting the pandemic get in the way of doing these wonderful virtual events. So we appreciate the Keene Sentinel and are happy to be a partner with them as well. At Savings Bank of Walpole, we're proud to call this community home. We're proud to be part of a community that recognizes the strong, the talented, the committed, yes, the extraordinary women that make our community so special. They add so much to our lives and enrich our community in so many ways, and we're truly appreciative. On behalf of everyone at Savings Bank of Walpole, we'd like to congratulate, recognize, and thank the extraordinary women being recognized tonight. We hope you enjoy your evening.
We have 3 extraordinary women to meet still. Our next honoree is Amy Matthews. There is no Cliff Notes version of Amy's resume. It is what it is: long, full, a chronicle of accomplishment, ascension, and professional and civic service. Amy is Chief Nursing Officer and Vice President of Patient Care Services at Cheshire Medical Center. She has 4 nursing degrees, including a doctorate, and has worn many other titles at the hospital: Emergency Department Nurse, Trauma Program Coordinator, Director of Critical Care and Emergency Services, and Senior Director of Patient Care Services. She also serves as the Operations Chief for Cheshire Medical Center's Incident Command Team, which has overseen the hospital's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, from visitor limitations to how staff addressed the public health crisis. Quote, "We moved quickly to be ready, and as we are very fortunate that we didn't go steeply into a high peak cases process," Amy says, "the decisions made in our area did help to flatten the curve." One of her largest projects, while she was Director of Critical Care and Emergency Services, was about 8 years ago, while the hospital's emergency department was being renovated. The department used to be one large open room with only curtains dividing the patients. A new, more private setting, quote, "is much more efficient," Amy says, and that's what they work with today. Amy began her career in Atlanta as a medical surgical nurse, and from there held various nursing roles in several states, including as a nurse in the neonatal intensive care unit and emergency care. Amy serves on the Monadnock Regional Healthcare Workforce Group, the New Hampshire Nurses Association, and the Monadnock United Way. She has previously volunteered with the American Red Cross, Girl Scouts, and the New Hampshire Trauma Medical Review Board. Amy is a force with a passion for the ties that bind nonprofits and community, and for building bridges that connect people and programs and resources. Here is a video of Amy Matthews.
I feel very privileged that as a nurse, I have been invited into the most intimate moments in somebody's life, some of them very joyous and some of them very, very difficult. But it's a space that not every profession gets to enter into. And one of the most important interventions that a nurse can offer patients is to be fully present and to be with them in whatever moment they're experiencing. And I think that naturally translates into leadership, because I don't have all the answers, but can you be fully present with staff as they work through it, as they take on the next challenge, as we look for the best solution for everyone? I believe strongly that being a leader is not about who I am. It's about how do I serve everyone else, and how do we continue to bring out the best in people. I think equanimity, or the ability to be calm and be centered in whatever's going on around you is really important for, certainly for leadership, but I think it's also an important personal trait to not get yourself pulled out of your center and what's important to you, because if you're so distracted by all the noise, I think you're going to be really tired, and I don't think you're going to be true to yourself, and I don't think you're going to serve the people you need to serve.
Our next honoree is Kat Boyd Pickering. Kat is 35, but she is wise beyond her age. Her life philosophy is simple and inspirational. Quote, "I like to live my life helping other people," she said. And for a young woman, she knows a lot about the cycle of life. By profession, Kat is director of Fletcher Funeral Home and Cremation Services. She is also a mother, a stepmother, and a particular chapter of her life shows a surrogate mother. Living to help others is there a more poignant example than giving the gift of life? Kat was matched with a then recently married couple. The wife had been diagnosed with cancer and therefore unable to carry a child for herself. After months of health screenings and tests and nightly hormone injections, Kat gave birth in May of 2018. While the baby was born prematurely and required extra medical care, she is now a healthy girl. That Kat gave in this way, and that she is often the last one present at the end of a life, that takes an extraordinary person, Kat's mother-in-law, Deb Pickering, wrote in her nomination letter. And Kat accomplishes all of that with grace, Deb says. Kat lives in Swansea with her husband, Nick, her daughter and stepdaughter. She studied at Clark University and at Keene State. And during an apprenticeship at Fletcher Funeral Home, she earned an associate degree in applied science in funeral service. Kat serves on the board of the Samaritans in Keene, an agency and resource that provides information and raises awareness about suicide. And she volunteers with the organization to aid those in crisis, those who may be contemplating suicide, as well as those who have lost loved ones to suicide. Says Kat, quote, "If you can put goodness out in the world, why not do it? I want to be able to look back and feel good about what I've done with my life, and to be able to say I made a positive difference for people." Here is a video of Kat.
I do feel like funeral service is a calling for myself. Ever since I was a little girl, I just had this feeling that this is actually where I wanted to work, not even knowing all of the details of what the job would entail. But I have a very strong passion for helping people, being there for people when they need a shoulder, someone to lift them up. It's not just a career, it's truly a way of life. My family's put up with it. They're very understanding. They know what I do is very meaningful to me, so if that means missing dinner on a night or getting up early or being away, they know that I'm going to be there for the families that I'm serving. And I think it is one of the greatest honors to be able to care for someone once they've passed. In some cultures it would be the family, but here we have other families that are placing their trust in me to care for their loved one, because the care doesn't end at the time of someone's passing. There's still care that needs to be done well after. And also in a sense a caretaker for the family too.
Our next and final honoree is Dr. Ann Shedd. A curiosity for the natural world, a fondness for the outdoors, and an interest in population issues gave shape to the pursuits of Ann, who moved to this region where she has family roots going back more than a century. She came here in 2007. Her presence is a good fortune, Patricia Martin, a friend and colleague around environmental issue, says. Ann is truly extraordinary and a local treasure. She's the real deal, Martin says. Ann had a long, successful medical career in obstetrics and gynecology, but since retiring, much of her efforts are centered squarely and tirelessly on energy, climate, and sustainability. Ann is chairwoman of Keene's Energy and Climate Committee and the co-chair-elect of the Monadnock Sustainability Hub. Through the Energy and Climate Committee, Ann has worked to advance the city's long-term energy goals. A citywide transition to 100% renewable electricity by 2030 and 100% thermal and transportation energy by 2050. The Hub has hosted public events geared toward generating discussion about clean energy, including an annual event where participants can learn more about electric vehicles. Ann has also served on Keene's Conservation Commission. Quote, The impact on human health is definitely part of my interest in climate and energy issues, Ann says. While heavily involved in environmental matters in the public sphere, Ann is committed to those same values in her private life. Those closest to her are just glad that Ann's path led her back to this area, where her energies and regard for the healthy life and community outcomes are making a big difference. Here is a video of Dr. Shed.
My interest in the climate change solutions is that I am a solutions-oriented person. Sure, a very private and rather shy person. I've had to step out of my comfort zone and take a role in addressing those challenges. This is one of the critical issues of our era, and it will impact generations. So I feel strongly that action at many different levels is really imperative at this point. I've had a long interest in renewable energy, how to decrease the impacts of climate change, how to be prepared for the climate change impacts. And I also bring the perspective of public health challenges. My professional background was in medicine as an obstetrician oncologist, so I'm very concerned about the impacts on human populations.
So there you have it, 10 extraordinary women. And I hope it was inspiring for all of you. Because we cannot gather here together physically, this is a great time, I think, to raise a glass to the screen before you. This is mine. And to virtually toast and congratulate all 10 extraordinary women, class of 2020. I would like one more time to thank our sponsors, our judges, our producer, all of you out there for logging in and joining us from the front row of your living rooms. Over the next few days, as you read the magazine profiles and get to know better the women honored today, we hope that you are as moved and as inspired, and perhaps as we are, and perhaps as motivated to get involved in ways that you might not have imagined. How we shape the quality of life for our citizens and our communities is a shared assignment. We have more examples now of how that can be done. Thank you, Cheryl, Susan, Jennifer, Carly, Melissa, Carol, Jean, Amy, Kat, and Ann, not for being extraordinary, but for being uniquely you, for giving back, for caring, for your example, for your concern and kindness. Thank you for your love of people, places, and things, and thank you for changing the world. Congratulations, stay well, and be safe, friends. Good night.